Hey, I'm Bob at ILikeToMakeStuff. Today we're gonna make a table that's great for gaming. We are back at the office today, and we have a room in here which we don't really have anything to do with, but we have an idea. This would typically be the entryway for an office, but we don't really have any traffic, so we're trying to figure out how to use this room. We're gonna make it a combination of a conference room and also just a place for us to play games and kind of hang out and meet and whatever we need. So we're gonna build a big table and put it right here. We had an idea to integrate a projector into this project, so we reached out to our friends at LG because we worked with them before, and they sent us that thing. This is the latest Cinebeam 4K projector from LG. This thing is fantastic, and we mounted it on the ceiling so that we can project a 300-inch screen on that wall, but we're also going to use it to project down onto the table that we're going to build right here. So let's talk about the table. So as a conference table, it'll have a nice wooden top, it'll look really slick, but then part of that top can come out and will reveal a lower section where we can play Dungeons and Dragons, X-Wing, whatever game we want. We can leave the game pieces in there. And then that lower section is also going to be the projection surface. But rather than actually move the projector and turn it down, we're going to add something to the outside of the projector so that we can reroute the image from that wall down onto the table. From our model, we printed out a little schematic here with all the different pieces. We've got measurements on them so we can start cutting these down. This base is going to be the first thing that we make, and it's all made out of 4x4s and 2x4s, a little bit of plywood. It's really simple to put together. So we're going to go ahead and get this cut and assembled, and then we can start building on top of it. So these pieces are going to go together like this, and then this is kind of just a decorative piece that's going to go on top there. So we can really just glue those together, maybe put in some brad nails. But to put these two big pieces together, we're going to use dowels and lots of glue surface on the inside of these faces. So basically what you do is you drill holes in one face, and then you put these little dowel centers inside those holes, and they make a little point that sticks out. Then you push the pieces together, that little point leaves an indentation on this side, and then you can drill a hole centered on that point, and then you've got matching holes between the two pieces, and then you can put in a dowel. Now we have to do that on the top and the bottom of 4 separate legs. Now I've got these leg assemblies out of the clamps, and we're going to screw them all together with some 2x4s across, and we're going to use pocket holes for that. You're not going to see these pocket holes. They'll be plenty strong enough, but I did want to point something out. When you're doing pocket holes, they actually have different types of screws for different types of woods. They have a fine thread for hardwoods, and so typically you would use this for things like oak, like we're doing here, or any other hardwoods, but you also have to have the right length screw, and the fine ones I have are too short. So today we're actually going to use a coarse screw, even though we should be using fine, but we're just going to use the one that I have on hand that's the right length. So the base is pretty much done. We could stop here, but we're also going to add a couple of pieces of plywood to each side on the top and the bottom, and that's because we're going to take advantage of the space in between. Eventually, once we get the rest of the table built, we're going to have some removable pieces, and they're going to get stored in this little gap right here. The base is all complete, and I went ahead and cut down the first piece of plywood that's going to lay on top of that, and that's going to be the bottom layer of our tabletop. We're actually going to be making two separate play surfaces. We're going to have the top surface, so just a flat table, but then you can take the middle section out and reveal kind of an arena that's going to be down on this surface. So the first thing we need to do here is build a box to house that arena, and then we'll work on top of it. I used some spacers to make sure all these pieces are in the right place from the outside edge, and then drew a line along the inside edge so I know where the boundaries are. Now, using that line that I drew, I'm going to drill some holes through the piece of plywood all the way through, but they're going to be countersunk on this side, and that's because this whole piece of plywood is going to flip over, and then we can drive screws up through the bottom into these walls to lock it all together. These pieces are attached now, glued and screwed in place, and so this is our arena area that I was talking about. So next up, we got to take a full sheet of plywood, lay it on the top, and then cut this section out, and then round off the corners, and we'll have our actual play surface where your arms will go. Now you can see kind of what the table is going to look like. And the last pieces we have to cut are just some panels that are going to drop in here to make this a continuous surface across. We'll cut those, it's just plywood, no big deal. But the next stage, before we actually attach any of this together, is to do the finishing work. We have a lot of edge banding on a lot of these exposed surfaces around the outside. We're going to paint the insides, the bottom of this black, to have some contrasting color here, and we're going to add an edge band around the outside that's actually called T-molding. This is stuff that I've used in the past on arcade cabinets, and basically you use this little bit, you cut a slot all the way around the outside of a piece of plywood or whatever material. Then this little barb on the T-molding pushes into that slot, and it adds a protective border around the outside of the table. So we have a lot of routing, edge banding, painting, really boring stuff, so we're going to speed through it.
Are you serious?
The tabletop is now all edge banded. We still have to put the rubber T-molding on the outside of it, but this is ready to be glued into place. And we went ahead and made two of the panels that are going to drop in here, and I wanted to make the last one in place to make sure that it fit really well. So we're going to get this thing glued down, drop those two in, and then cut that center one to fit.
So innovative.
I'm a problem solver. So the tabletop is now complete. We have 3 separate pieces that can come out individually. We were just talking about it, and there's a possibility that over time one or all of these could bow a little bit, and if that's the case, we can always put in some dowels in between them and only glue those dowels into one piece. So the whole top could kind of snap together and then snap apart when you take it out, because each one of these 3 pieces can come out and be stored in the base underneath. So we're ready to put on this T-molding that I showed you earlier on. It's really easy to just kind of knock it into that slot with a mallet, but I did want to point out one thing. When this goes around a curve, if you have a tight radius, that little barb that's on the inside will begin to kind of fold and buckle. So before you put it into those tight curves, you actually need to take some nippers and cut out little sections of this to give it an area so that the pieces don't try to fold over each other. The T-molding is on. That's an easy and really nice way to finish out an outer edge of a table, so keep that in your pocket. And also I wanted to point out that this tabletop is not attached. It's currently just sitting on the base because we want to be able to move the top and the base separately to get it through a doorway, but also just to make it easier to move. And when we get it in place, we can drive down screws through this surface into the base, because this surface is going to be covered up and you won't see the screws. But also, we're going to add some addressable LEDs all the way around the perimeter of the inside of this area. Those LEDs are going to be controlled by a control pad that's going to be mounted right here, so that the DM, or the person controlling the game, can actually control those LEDs. You're going to be able to select which player it's currently playing. You're going to be able to turn on animations and all that stuff. Let's go to the computer. I'll show you the details. The cool thing about this is it's really simple, and you can reprogram the Arduino to change its function in the future. All we have here is an Arduino, and then we have a little keypad with some numbers and letters on it, and then LED strips. This is just one of the sections. But I wanted to show you that by selecting a number, you're selecting the player position, so you can turn that player on and off. When player 1 is finished, you can have it go to player 2. And so on. But then we also have these letters over here, and I've got some basic LED animations built into those, so that we can have like a firestorm or lightning or green smoke or whatever you want to animate. You can just build those in, and then you have 0 that lets you clear the whole thing out. Those LEDs are going to go in these channels. Now this is a small aluminum channel that has a corner on the back of it and an angle in the front of it. So the LEDs are going to be setting at kind of a 45-degree angle in the corner, and then they'll be covered up with this diffuser that snaps into this track. So this is plastic and aluminum. You can cut these with pretty much any woodworking tool. So I'm going to go to the miter saw, put miters on the ends of these pieces, and then fit them around the outside of the box. Those tracks are pretty awesome. I think I'm going to use those in some future projects. But right now, this thing is really done enough to take to the office. Then we can just start assembling all the pieces, and we can wrap this thing up. To figure out how to get the image to shine down onto the table, we came up with this idea of actually putting a mirror that can move. So these are pieces that Josh modeled and 3D printed that have a moving part on them, and these go on each side of the projector. There's going to be a mirror in between them in these little slots. And then when you move this down, it will move that mirror in front of the projector, shining the image down at 90 degrees. Let me cut the piece of glass, put it in between these, and you'll see what I'm talking about. The table is in place, and one of the last things to actually put on the table is the projection surface. This is white blackout material that you would put behind another piece of fabric to make a blackout curtain. And so it's white on one side, we're going to use it as our projection surface. We're going to attach it to a piece of really thin MDF and just use some spray adhesive on here, put it down, make sure it's ironed, it's nice and smooth, and then this whole piece can just drop right into the table. We're going to take this panel outside and put some spray adhesive on it. And the reason we're not doing it in here is because this stuff gets everywhere. In fact, that's why we're using a panel to begin with, so I don't have to spray this directly onto the table. The reason we put the projection surface in the table is so that we can shine maps and different things down onto the table while we play games. That's going to be coming from the newest Cinebeam 4K projector from LG. LG is sponsoring this video, and I want to tell you all about that projector because it is really awesome. It can do a true UHD 4K image at 300 inches on the wall, so we can watch a giant movie over there. It's also got built-in AirPlay 2 home kit. It's got fantastic built-in speakers, but you could also use Bluetooth to send that audio out to a surround sound system. And it's also a smart projector. It's got built-in apps like Netflix and Disney Plus and YouTube. Plus, it comes with a really awesome remote that you can use as a 3D mouse when you're pointing it at the wall. One of the problems with this particular room is that we cannot control the light in here very well because of a big window. Luckily, this projector has a brightness optimizer built into it with adaptive contrast. That means it will account for the light in the room. So if you have a really bright room, you can still have a really bright projection. It's a really great projector with a ton of features, and we're really thankful to LG for sending it to us to make this project way cooler. If you're in the market for a projector for your wall or a gaming table, because we are going to have plans for this table available, be sure to go check out all of the newest Cinebeam projectors from LG. Big thanks to them for sponsoring this video. Let's get this thing finished up. And with that, the table is finally complete. Unfortunately, we have to do a little bit of work before we can start playing games. That's enough working. Now it's time to play some games. So all we have to do is pop this top off, stow it down below, and then flip down the mirror that we added to the projector. So here it is, our finished game table. I'm very happy with how this thing came out, and it was a lot of fun to play games at it. A lot of people, when they make a gaming table, will put a TV in this lower section, and that's totally an option, but having the projector allowed us to have this screen, but also a giant screen on the wall where we can watch movies. Cool. And this table is great for lots of things. You can have a puzzle or a game going in this lower section and then cover it up so that you can eat at the table or play cards on top. There's lots of options, and it's a very easy table to build. We're gonna have some plans available for it if you wanna make one of your own. Big thanks to LG for sponsoring this video and for the projector. We've got tons of other types of projects that you may want to check out. And if you're not subscribed, be sure to do that as well. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. So there it is, folks. Your ultimate gaming table right there.
Yahtzee!
Cards!
Skip-bo!
And then this little barb on the, what's this stuff called?
T-molding.
T-molding. And we're gonna add an edge band around the outside that's actually called T-molding.
Point to the barb.
Hey there, Barb!